What is up, LEGO fans? Cow60Bricks here, and today I'm going to be reviewing the brand new season of LEGO Ninjago, or The Island, or more commonly referred to as Season 14. Now, before I get into the review, I am just going to give some general info on it. So obviously it came out in March 2021. As I said, it's known as Season 14, but officially it's the first part of Season 3 since the new reboot, and counting Day of the Departed and the pilots as they are kind of seasons, it would chronologically be Season 16, I suppose. Now, The Island is 40 minutes long. It's the shortest season ever. Most are between 100 and 300 minutes, so it's incredibly short. We'll get to why that's not a good thing later. And the focus ninja is Lloyd, and the villains are the keepers. So with all of that info out of the way, it's time to get into how I'm going to structure this review. So I'm going to go through each episode individually. I'm going to go through the plot very briefly, some good points, some bad points, and then I'll just give an overview of the entire season at the end and we'll be done. Right, let's start off with episode 1, Uncharted. The plot of Uncharted is fairly simple. So it starts off with Wu, Clutch Powers, and Misako and some other guys exploring in the jungle. They stumble upon the totem pole or the stone golems, and then there's like a flash of lightning and probably some shouting and screaming, can't really remember. But yeah, basically it attacks them and captures them. Then we very quickly cut to the monastery. The ninja immediately noticed that the Wu and Misako are missing, and one of the ninja just like randomly blurts out about some guy they know that went to the island. Seemingly have all this information about the island. I would expect Zane to, but I have a feeling there were some other ninjas that just randomly knew about it too. So they very quickly go off on the bounty, get the guy. Doesn't take much effort to get him because this episode is only 10 minutes long. And they travel off then to the island with Twitchy Tim. And they release the catamarans. A very nice sequence, probably the best part of the episode, of them going through like the stormy weather to get to the island. And they get there, call out the jungle chopper bikes, and the episode ends. So, good points. Very few. But the animation and the scenery was very nice. There's like one of the shots that nearly looks like a painting. It's quite beautiful, and the fighting and stuff was great. And again, that scene with the catamarans was nice enough. Nothing too special, and I'm really clutching at straws trying to give good points for this episode. So now it's time to get to the bad points. Right, so in terms of bad points, there are so many. I'm gonna try to make this as quick as I can. So the main one, and the reason for all the other bad points, is it's rushed. 10 minutes is way too short, and the plot that there was for this episode, they usually would cover that amount of material in probably 60 to 100 minutes. Now, I'm okay with them, cutting out the fluff and trying to get there a little bit quicker just so it's not boring, but this was overkill completely. If the plot wasn't so basic and easy to follow, you would not have a clue what's going on. It's moving way too fast. And because it's moving way too fast, it moves into another point that the characters don't have many lines. You don't really get any character development at all in this episode. The jokes are incredibly stupid and childish, just really cliche, not Ninjago at all. Just very stupid, to be honest. The plot is so basic, it's just not Ninjago at all for me. And my last point as well, the Season 13 ending of Where Will the Wind Take Us? They completely left that off just like as if it never even happened. Now, I do have a theory about that. I might make a video on that, but I won't say anything more about that. And yeah, that's basically the bad points summed up. And I guess it's time to move on to episode 2. So this episode starts where the other leaves off. They're in the jungle on their jungle chopper bikes. And then they decide to go by foot, so they get off them, and we have some like ruffling in the background, and that's the jungle dragon. And then yeah, it basically jumps out on them, and they're all scared. And then they discover, as Zane says, that it's docile. And then there's just some playing around with it, throwing coconuts for it, some childish humour here. Eventually they go back and they find the stone golems, and we actually have a really cool fight here. The highlight of Season 14 so far to me. Really enjoyed that fight sequence, to be honest. There was a really cool bit with Zane and one of them like spinning around. It was pretty cool. And then basically all of the ninja get split up from Lloyd, and they go off along a rope bridge. At the end of that rope bridge, there's some keepers there who zap them with lightning. They go unconscious, and then they're captured, brought to the keepers' village, And then there it's explained to them from Chief Mammotus, who we meet, and he explains that they have the amulet of Woljira, who they worship basically, and they think the ninja are trying to steal it, so they've captured the ninja, and then that just leaves Lloyd on his own to rescue Misako and Wu. As for good points, I do have a little bit more to say for this episode over the other, because the animation with the Stone Golem fight was really, really good. That's the highlight of this episode and made me enjoy it just a bit more. And again, the visuals are great. The visuals in Season 14 are 10 out of 10. It's just a real disappointment that they aren't put to, I suppose, a good use of a good plot. And that leads us into our bad points. Once again, a little bit rushed. Now, this one definitely wasn't near as rushed as Episode 1, but it was a tiny bit. I guess it was okay, to be honest, in that terms, thinking about it. However, very childish, the whole jungle dragon thing. I was just so cringy. And the plot is just incredibly basic, as I've already said. Like, there's just no thought being put into this. It's very, very, very lazy, to be honest. And yeah, the childish, no character development once again. But I do have to say this episode was an improvement overall, because we had that nice scene and we also had less rushedness. But the other aspects still need to be improved. So episode 3 begins where we left off in the last one. The ninja are captured by the keepers, and they take Jay, and the rest of the ninja are thrown into a jail cell where they actually find Misako, Wu and Clutch Powers, and we have some nice dialogue here, and they just meet up, I guess. Then we kind of cut to Lloyd, who is with Twitchy Tim, and they are just planning to save the ninja, nothing too important. Then we go to Jay, who's being treated all nicely. He actually thinks that they're treating him as a king because of his lightning powers. And then we have a really fun scene with Lloyd and Zippy, and they're going around the Keeper's village, and he's basically throwing the coconut so that Zippy will go after and basically attack all of the Keepers. And that was how Lloyd freed his friends. They're going off, and then Clutch Powers and his gang actually take a detour, and they try to steal the amulet, and of course that gets all of the ninjas captured again. So now they're on the beach, they're getting zapped a lot, and Jay is brought out. And he still thinks that he's being treated like a king, so he obviously uses his power to try to free the ninja, and it doesn't work. And then we figure out Chief Mammotus's plan, which is to sacrifice Jay to Woljira because they think this will make her happy. And essentially, the first Spinjitzu Master actually asked them to do this, which I quite enjoyed. And then the episode ends as Jay is essentially being rowed out on a boat towards what appears to be Woljira herself. So in terms of good points, there's definitely a lot more for this episode. I 100% enjoyed it way more than the last two. So we'll start off, I suppose, with the pacing. The pacing of this episode was much, much better than the last two. It definitely flowed better. It felt good to me. It felt normal Ninjago, and that's what I wanted to see. And yeah, that was what the problem was with the last two. And yeah, it wasn't rushed. So it was pretty standard, but I'm happy that they managed to fix that. So it's been slightly redeemed for me now at the island. And then, of course, as usual, the animation and the action, especially that scene with Zippy and Lloyd, that was incredible. And then all the lighting as well, especially when they're putting the staff into the lock and all that sort of thing. And all of that is great as usual, and the visuals, of course. Now it's time to get to the bad points. And there's actually not much for this episode, which is good. So I would only say that the plot is still a little bit basic for my liking. It's okay, it has improved, but it's not that twisty yet, as Ninjago usually is, and there is still quite a lot of cheesy jokes. I'm not enjoying Jay's lines at all. He used to be very funny back before, I suppose, this new era of Ninjago, and they're just completely picking him up wrong, and it's not funny, it's just kind of stupid. So I hope that they can sort of fix that. The start of episode 4, the ninja managed to free themselves, and yeah, everyone is freed as well, Clutch Powers and all them. And then they basically have a tiny fight with the keepers, and then they get out to the sea. Zane makes like an ice lane for them to walk on. They get to Jay, they're attempting to try and save him, and then Woljira is like sending fire and stuff, and then Woljira eventually captures Jay, and they rush back. However, Lloyd does find a piece of a wooden tooth, and that's when they discover that Woljira is not real. So then the keepers explain their backstory about how the first Spinjitzu Master trusted them to protect people from Woljira and keep her happy, essentially. And they had done that, and she had been sleeping, and then one day Woljira had like arisen, and they had to give all of their riches and jewels and that sort of thing. And so then we discover that is in fact a bunch of criminals working under Ronin who have been taken all of these, and it's basically just a scheme of them, and I feel like it fits Ronan's character very well. He has been known to do things like this in the past, so I thought it was a good twist. And so yeah, then the ninja come, they save Jay, they attack them, and then Twitchy Tim saves the day by crashing into Ronan's ship. Quite a dangerous and risky move, but he's okay. And then Ronan's captured, thrown in the cell, and then the episode basically finishes up as Master Wu, Lloyd, and Masako are standing on the edge of the pier, wondering if the real Wojira is still out there. And then we basically go underwater and we get a tease for Seabound as we see Wojira sleeping. So a lot of people are annoyed that the Wojira wasn't real, but she is real and she's still there. This was kind of just a side plot of Ronin, and I enjoyed it, but there is still the proper Wojira out there. This episode did a lot of things that episode 3 did right. It had great pacing, much unlike the first 2 episodes, and obviously the action, animation, and visuals, superb as always. Now, a few extra things I actually really enjoyed was the plot twist with Ronin and that whole scheme. I enjoy how the keepers don't always have to be the bad guys. I also like how well it set up season 15. So now we're here on the island, we got a friendship with the keepers, and then, you know, there's the whole Wojira thing going on, so I'm quite excited to see Seabound. I also really enjoyed the scene where Jay was being tugged off. Someone told me that Jay was going to die. I never believed it, but then watching that scene, I actually did feel quite like a lot of fear, which I've never felt watching Ninjago. It was kind of weird, but they actually did that really well. The fog and everything was quite scary. And should I say, there was no cheesy jokes in this episode, so they did really well. It was like quite serious, to be fair. I'm happy for that. Now, in terms of bad, there's only one thing I'd say. I felt that the ending was a tiny bit rushed, nowhere near as horrific as episode 1, but just a tiny bit. Like the clearing things up. I would have liked to see a bit more of Ronin. Yeah, definitely would have liked to see a bit more of Ronin, that's for sure. I can say that. But other than that, I quite really enjoyed this episode. With an absolutely terrible beginning but a quite nice ending, this season has turned out to be mediocre for me. I think it's going to be quite forgettable, but it does set up season 15 nicely overall. So now I'm just going to give a score to each episode. So for episode 1, I'm giving it a score of 2 out of 10. For episode 2, I'm giving it a score of 3 out of 10. And episode 3 and 4 both are receiving a 6 out of 10. Now, as for my overall score of the entire season, I'm going to award it a 5 out of 10. Now, that's not the perfect average of those 4 scores for each episode. However, I feel like the last 2 episodes did redeem and bring the whole entire season as a whole together more nicely. So the individual episodes of 1 and 2 were terrible, but they were, I suppose, saved. And yeah, that's my overall thoughts on the season. It's okay. Yeah, I'm not too happy with it, especially the beginning, but I feel like the ending is what you're going to remember, so it's overall just grand. Hope you enjoyed the video. That's all from me. Have a great. I almost forgot, if you don't like, subscribe and share this with your friends. The buildable bat will be very upset.